Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. For the second CDL weekend running, it seems after the conclusion of the weekend's games, a roster changes going down. Last time out it was Vegas, this time the Los Angeles Guerrillas, a team that's won a grand total of 0 maps so far this stage, despite good land performances relatively so far this season. They though are making a move. Assault, it seems, is gone, another man coming in instead, but some drama with Exceed seemingly not so happy that he isn't going to be called up to their starting roster. Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate. Crazy crossover I thought here between Scump and Patrick Mahomes. We have plenty to talk about today because as we're going to get into Los Angeles Guerrillas, one of the conversations around that team actually comes back to Atlanta FaZe because Cold War FaZe and MW3 FaZe have lost to barely any teams. Neither team lost to OpTic during those seasons. The only players that they have lost to actually FaZe during this year and back in Cold War were Insight and CleanX because they've lost to Toronto both times. They've lost to them this year, lost to them back in Cold War. I think they've lost to HyDra this year and back in Cold War because he was on the Subliners both times. The other team that both versions of FaZe have lost to were the Los Angeles Guerrillas, which is such a crazy thing to think about, but it remains true. And the only man that was present on both of those LA Guerrillas teams, because back in Cold War it was aBeZy, Silly, Vivid, and Assault. And of course, this year, the team is rather different, but Assault is still there. And yeah, so he's the only player outside of Insight, CleanX, and HyDra that has beaten both, you know, god tier versions of FaZe. But I made this point on last night's Dope Check show that I actually think this year's FaZe might well be better than Cold War FaZe. I think that Drazah has a higher ceiling than Nastie's, and I think that the competition this year is better, to be honest. And the numbers are honestly in MW3 FaZe's favour. You look back and you think about Cold War FaZe, you think, wow, they were untouchable. And sure, Cold War FaZe won 4 events. MW3 FaZe have won 1, but after 2 events of the season, Cold War FaZe had also won 1 event. So, sure, maybe FaZe win the next 3. We don't really know. They'll be favourites too on current evidence, but in terms of series record, it's the same. In terms of map record, MW3 FaZe actually has a higher map win percentage at 72%. I think this works out at 69-70%, something like that. 3-0 sweeps. They've had more this year than this time back in Cold War, and there's only been 2 events compared to 3 as there was back then. Highest win streak is a little bit different. Wins versus OpTic and Empire were 6 in both games. So the similarities are kind of never ending after 26 series in both respective seasons. So we'll see if that changes. But of course, teams have got to try and figure out a way to beat FaZe. Guerrillas somehow did it in that online match just before Major 2, but that was the most recent time FaZe have lost to anybody. And clearly Toronto are not at the level that they need to be at to beat FaZe. Hixie's been talking about that. And honestly, I thought there was no chance that any of the top 4 teams made changes before the World Championship, right? Because I thought, okay, the 4 teams will go to champs, someone's going to win, and then whoever doesn't win probably going to make some moves. But I don't think it's completely impossible that Toronto or even New York could make changes before then. Like, let's say Toronto or New York, they struggle, they get by in this online stint, but they maybe go, 4-3 or something, and they end up getting through to winners, but not emphatically. They turn up to their major, get double rounded, come top 12. Like Toronto top 12 of the major, let's say New York top 12 of the major. At that point, if FaZe were to go on to win with OpTic in the finals, I'm not sure what change you make to try and improve at that point, but if the slump continues for guys like Envoy and for the Subliners team in general, is it impossible they consider a move mid-season? I mean, I don't think it's impossible. I think it's still unlikely, but I think all of a sudden, the fact that there is big separation between the very best and theoretically the best of the rest does mean that it's not impossible that something happens here. Now, I did want to quickly say on Illy, I don't know if this has happened before now, but we know that he tweeted these couple of things out. He also tweeted this out though, right? You guys might remember this. This probably does it for me this year. Felt like I was final as well. It is what it is. So he tweeted this out now. Well, after he was officially released by Seattle Surge a couple of weeks ago. That tweet has now been deleted. I don't know when he deleted it. He may have deleted it a long time ago. But I just wanted to mention it anyway, because I noticed it today that this tweet no longer existed. So, does that mean that actually maybe he could be back this year? I don't know. That's kind of a matter for debate. I would like to see it. Of course, he was trialed for the Minnesota Rocker, we believe. That didn't go anywhere. They got Gunless instead. But there are other teams that potentially could benefit from Illy services. One of the chief ones we were looking at previously, of course, was the Carolina Ravens, but now that they're playing proper online COD rather than online COD scattered around the country, they look like a much better team, which is great to see as well, but obviously maybe not so great for ReeaL. One team as well that is interesting is the Boston Breach. Just wanted to mention this from Slasher because it's pretty funny. We know that he was effectively roasting them the other day because they lost in the Game 5 round 11 in, yeah, I don't want to talk about that again, fashion to the Minnesota Rocker. Slasher was talking about this, and he was actually in the chat of yesterday's episode. Thought this is kind of interesting. I thought, you know what, let me just screenshot this. I'll mention it tomorrow. Only bad S&D team, my only bad S&D team like ever. Must be me that's the problem, because that's kind of what we were discussing, that they, since making the change for Slasher, Boss and for Seam, of course, as well, they have lost 2 Game 5s, right? To Miami, they lost Game 5, and to Rocker, they lost Game 5. And I'm pretty sure they lost both surges in both of those series. I know that Doug was talking about this on the reverse sweep. I haven't actually got the chance yet to listen to what Doug had to say on this, so I know people have been talking about it. But yeah, so Slasher is basically saying, look, you drop me, and it's my only ever bad search and destroy team that I've ever had, because typically Slasher, great search and destroy player, his S&T teams are pretty damn good. And, you know, the theory was, well, has Slasher fallen off? Is that why Boston are no longer good in search? And Slasher now in hindsight is saying, look, it weren't me that was the problem with that search and destroy. They've got rid of me and they're still 0-4 in search, and it's still costing them situations. And that's certainly the case. If they'd have won both of those series, Boston, and they'd have, you know, won the Game 5s, they'd have moved to 70 points in the league. They're at 50 points. They're a long way behind. Guerrillas are at 90 points. And Boston are at 50. So they have a lot of work to do. And honestly, I feel like that series against Rocker was effectively a must-win. And you can almost say the same for Miami Heretics. It's not completely over yet, but it ain't far away. To be fair, though, they have at least won some maps this stage. And you can't say that for a certain team, and that is the Los Angeles Guerrillas. These guys have come top 6 on LAN, both events, which is still somewhat surprising to me. But their online performances have been dreadful, and we know that online is important. And I was wondering, when are they going to do something to their roster? And that is seemingly what they're doing right about now. So there were some rumours emerging yesterday, various tweets going around from, you know, ProLoot and others, kind of implying that something was happening here. And of course, Flames is their substitute player. It's been a general feeling, understandably so. The Guerrillas don't want to spend any more money than they absolutely have to. These guys want to get out of the league. That's been very clear. Like, was it Stan Kroenke, right, has basically, or his team has made the executive decision, esports, it ain't for us, franchised esports certainly ain't for us, we're out of here. And now that they're getting their money back, whatever they paid in, they'll probably be out of here ASAP, I imagine, because they've managed to recoup their losses, and they're going to go, I imagine. The theory is the Guerrillas, they're not going to pay for a buyout of some other player. So if they're going to bring in a player, it's going to be their sub. I would also say the fact that they have a substitute in the first place is kind of surprising, because they could just put their coach down as a sub. But whatever, Flames is their substitute. A player that, you know, I think he's a talented player. Is he going to set the league on fire? Yeah, I'm not so convinced. But him and Estriel were a good duo. They dominated loads of Black Ops 4 throwback tournaments. They were known as kind of, you know, the Black Ops 4 grinders or whatever, not that long ago. And a player with some potential that has been sitting on the bench for a long time. And that's one of the reasons why I brought up Gwyn, actually, was just because Gwyn, if you guys don't remember, was on the Seattle Surge's bench last season. They had their chance, Surge, if they wanted to bring in Gwyn for Mac and make the team of Accuracy, Sib, Pred and Gwyn. And sure, maybe Pred and Gwyn wouldn't have worked so well or whatever, you can theorise. But obviously, in hindsight, that was worth a try, wasn't it? Like the fact that didn't even try Gwyn, because if they had have done, they might have thought, damn, this Gwyn guy's pretty good. We should keep him around for next season, even if the team didn't massively improve. Whereas no, they didn't do that at all. They just sat on Gwyn effectively on the bench, and then they kept their roster the same, and they were terrible, pretty much. They should have tried it. I think it's obvious in hindsight. And that's why, even if Flames isn't exactly the truth, you gotta try something. Like, when you're starting out this split Guerrillas, I mean, have a look at the numbers here. 0-3 series count, 0-9 map counts. Like, they've not won a map so far. Like, it has been brutal for the Guerrillas. And sure, somehow they're good on LAN, and maybe that matters, but you can't pretend, like, you can't tell me this team is good watching their play. So I think it was inevitable there to try something, right? But this is Exceed again, and, you know, this guy is pretty funny. To be fair, there's lots of guys in challenges that I understand why they're frustrated that they're not getting a spot. I think, honestly, though, it's kind of obvious why Exceed hasn't been signed here, because Guerrillas are not going to pay any extra money than they have to, as far as I'm concerned. They have Flames on their bench. they're paying him already, so there is no harm and no extra expenditure by subbing him into the roster. Whereas if they were to go ahead and sign somebody else, then there is something in play there, right? Because they would have to drop the player, let's say Assault in this case, or whatever change they wanted to make, and I think when you drop a player, you've got to pay them out a couple of months of salary, so it would cost something, and Guerrillas don't want to do that. It's funny how Guerrillas have gone from being the Moneybags org to, the absolute scraping the bottom of the barrel organisation. But yeah, Xyz was, seemingly not so happy that he was not getting signed. And even DiamondCon comes out and says, what's funny? So quite clearly, this is in relation to certain things. And Xyz had his chance in the league. And yeah, I mean, look, every time Xyz tweets anything, the Burger King card is in the replies. So I feel kind of a little bit bad at how much he gets clowns, but it is still pretty funny, right? So I thought I'd mention it regardless. And look, there's other players like Pentagrxm and others that want to get their spots in the league and talk about getting their spots. Pentagrxm comes in, hasn't been great so far, and that's a bit of an overstatement, I think, to be honest, to say that. Adam Assault, I don't know exactly what he's thinking, just because he tweeted a couple of things about the Lakers-Nuggets game. He didn't tweet anything else, so I don't know if he's kind of chilling or not, but basically, as Ronnie says, Flames will be in and Assault will be gone. That is the change they're looking to make, and I feel like this is a change that I've expected for some time. To be honest, I would have expected it to happen at least after Major 2, but they got top 6, so they decided not to. But after a couple of weeks of qualifiers, they know it's not the same. Well, Fame says the team ain't the same as it was before, and Assault has been... Look, Assault was a great player back in World War II. This guy on Samurai Dumont was a guaranteed 1.4 plus KD, World Championship winner, MVP on the Evil Geniuses team that season. Crazy storyline to think about. But, the last couple of years, Assault hasn't been quite as good. He's a slow, iron boots AR player, doesn't deliver much damage, doesn't deliver many kills, has got a bit of a tendency lately to, when he really needs a good series, to actually deliver something reasonable. But lately it's pretty much been either Assault or DiamondCon getting slammed. And if you look at the numbers here, the Slayer rating from Assault is, one of the lowest in the entire league. He just doesn't get many kills at all. I think that if you had to make a change on, if you were forced to make a two-man change, potentially Fame and Assault would be the ones. I feel like DiamondCon, on the whole, has been good enough. We can look at Major 2, for example. DiamondCon wasn't great Major 2. I think Estriel was their best player then, and Fame is still kind of up and down. The team just isn't really good from top to bottom, but if you did have to make a move, I think really Assault would be the man to look at here. And it's not like he's getting hill time either. Look at the objective for 10 minutes. He's got the lowest hill time in the lobby apart from Estriel, so I just don't know what he really does on the map. His search and destroy and Los Angeles Guerrilla search was okay during that stage, but he was still probably their weakest player in that mode. And then control, that weren't pretty either for maybe a slower AR player that should be doing better. So I think it's been a no-brainer to me that Assault has not been performing well enough. These are their numbers so far this stage as well, which are, ugly. Assault just loves the 65 Slayer rating, doesn't he? And I just don't see if there's enough impact there to justify that. So they're apparently going to make this move. Is it going to make much difference? I don't know. I don't expect it to move the needle especially, but it's one of those things that at this point in the season has got to be worth a try, because they're at 90 points. Because they've done well on LAN, they're actually in position, they're right on the border of World Championship qualification, but they will need to turn up, because I don't know if they're going to get another top 6 at LAN, maybe even further than that. It feels unlikely to me. So they're going to need to start winning something online, and that's got to happen right about now. And actually Assault falls into the category of 4 world champions that have been benched this year. iLLeY, aRCTY, Slasher, and Assault. One of those 4 guys were in every COD Champs Grand Final from 2016 to 2022. And if FaZe were top 2 last year rather than top 3, then Slasher would have been there again and closing out the list over the last, 8 years it would have been. But this is the schedule just to look at quickly. Guerrillas, they play Minnesota, Rocker, and Boston this weekend. So these are look, they've lost their first 3. They have to win one, probably both of these. So if there is a time to make the move, now is probably the time. And if it doesn't work out, I guess you can bring Assault back in, or maybe Assault back in and bring in Flames for DiamondCon. I don't know. But at least trying something is commendable as far as I'm concerned, and some understandable reaction to it as well. So very much interested in your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.